I didn't realize the contract I signed had my own name missing. That's the line that still rings in my ears, the moment everything fell apart, though the unraveling began long before that. I remember sitting at my small kitchen table, staring at the paper spread before me like an invitation to a dream I'd waited my whole life to chase. My mother-in-law, Diane, stood across from me with her arms folded, her red lipstick perfect, as always, her perfume strong enough to fill the whole room. "Sweetheart," she said, tapping the corner of the folder, "this is your chance, our chance. You should be proud." And I was, or I wanted to be, but every dream looks clearer in hindsight. Back then, all I could see was opportunity. Not the strings, not the shadows, not the trap forming around me like a quiet fog. Back then, I still trusted her. Before that storm, my life looked simple, almost soft around the edges. I'd been married 3 years to my husband, Ethan, a gentle man, a man who preferred humming to speaking, a man who always rubbed the back of his neck when he was nervous. We lived in a modest townhouse on the east side of the city, the kind with a small fenced garden and floors that creaked in certain spots. Every morning, I woke up to the smell of the coffee Ethan brewed at exactly 6:15, strong and dark the way his mother liked it. Diane lived 10 minutes away, close enough for Sunday dinners and surprise visits. I'd been working as a receptionist at a dental clinic. Steady, predictable, but never enough to quiet the yearning in me. I'd always dreamed of owning a small boutique, a warm, curated space filled with handmade home goods, candles, tonal ceramics, soft linens, little things that made a house feel like a sanctuary, a place where people walked in and breathed easier. I used to sketch ideas in a notebook during my lunch breaks, shelves lined with amber bottles, a worn wooden cash counter, a bell on the door that chimed softly when customers entered, a place that felt like mine. Ethan supported me in the gentle, distant way he did most things. "It would be nice," he'd say, squeezing my shoulder, "one day when we can afford it." But one day felt like a moving target. And then came Diane, sharp-tongued, well-dressed, experienced in business, a woman who filled every room she entered with an energy that made people stand up straighter. She had run several businesses in her younger years, boutiques, event planning, consulting, and loved to remind everyone of it. She carried herself with a confidence I envied, even admired. So when she approached me about my dream, about helping me launch a boutique of my own, I thought, maybe this was the moment life finally opened its doors for me. I still remember that Sunday dinner, roast chicken, rosemary in the air, Diane placing her wine glass down with a click and saying, "I've been thinking, dear. You have potential, real potential, and I want to help you. Let me invest. Let me mentor you. Together, we can make something beautiful." Ethan beamed. I felt my heart flutter. The room felt warm. Looking back, I should have paid attention to the tiny details, the way Diane slid the idea across the table like she was offering far more than she ever intended to give, and taking far more than I ever imagined. But in that moment, all I felt was hope. Real, tangible, dizzying hope. We met the next morning in her living room, where she already had a portfolio mocked up, budget spreadsheets, market research, potential locations. She spoke with such certainty, such conviction, that I didn't realize how fast I was getting swept along. "This is a partnership," she told me, placing her manicured hand over mine. 50-50. I'll provide the startup capital and guidance. You provide the creative vision and day-to-day work. 50-50, I repeated, smiling. I didn't notice she hadn't actually said I owned 50%, just that she did. For weeks, I lived in a haze of movement, scouting storefronts, testing suppliers, sketching designs, building a mood board for the brand. I barely slept. I barely ate. There was a glow in me I hadn't felt in years. Ethan was supportive at first, though distant as ever. I'm glad you have something that excites you, he'd say, rubbing his neck. And Diane, she became omnipresent at meetings, calls, store visits. Every decision I made, she corrected. Every idea I had, she refined. Trust me, sweetheart, I know this industry. Sometimes her voice carried a sting I couldn't name, like a blade behind silk. But she was helping me, wasn't she? She was investing in me. This was our dream. My dream. Finally coming alive. So I ignored the discomfort, the way she talked over me, the way she dismissed my thoughts with a small laugh. I kept pushing forward until the first clue appeared, and at the time, it seemed small, almost inconsequential. But now I know that tiny moment was the first crack in the foundation, the whisper of the collapse to come. The first clue came, wrapped in something deceptively simple, an email. I remember it was a Wednesday afternoon, the kind where the sky seemed bruised with thick gray clouds and the air felt heavy. I was sitting in the small, freshly leased storefront, our storefront, surrounded by paint samples and an open laptop, music humming softly from a speaker. I'd been waiting all morning for a response from a ceramics supplier I loved. Their designs were soft-toned, handcrafted, exactly the aesthetic I envisioned for the boutique. Diane had insisted on handling the outreach so they'd take us seriously. So when the response popped up in my inbox, I opened it immediately. But the greeting made my stomach tilt. Dear Ms. Randall, we're excited to explore partnerships with your business. Your assistant forwarded your questions. I blinked. Ms. Randall. That was Diane's last name, my mother-in-law's name. I reread the line. Your assistant. Assistant? I stared at the screen as if the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. I checked the email thread. The sender wasn't me. It was Diane, using my business email address, the one she'd insisted we set up together, with her handling all the boring technical stuff. And the way she'd signed her message, warm regards, Diane Randall, owner and executive director. My chest tightened, a small hot knot forming beneath my ribs. Owner, executive director. I tried to swallow, but the air felt thick. This wasn't a simple mistake. This wasn't a typo. This wasn't her helping me. This was something else. Still, I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe she meant co-owner. Maybe she signed it that way, out of habit from her old businesses. Maybe I was overthinking everything because I'd barely slept the night before. I closed the laptop and stood, rubbing my palms against my jeans. The paint samples blurred on the table. The soft indie music suddenly felt too loud. I needed air. So I stepped outside. The smell of rain hovered in the wind. People walked past with umbrellas. Cars splashed through shallow puddles. I leaned against the brick wall of the storefront and breathed slowly. Don't be dramatic, I whispered to myself. Talk to her. She probably didn't mean anything by it. But that knot in my chest didn't ease. Later that evening, when Diane arrived, clicking down the sidewalk in heels too high for the weather, I decided I'd bring it up gently. She stepped inside, brushing water off her beige coat. "This paint color is all wrong," she said immediately, squinting at the walls. "We should have gone with the warm gray I recommended." I forced a smile. "We can adjust it. Hey, Diane, quick question. I got an email from the ceramic supplier and—" "Oh, good," she said, waving a hand dismissively as she walked past me. "They responded quickly." "Right, but they greeted you as the owner. And they referred to me as your assistant." She didn't pause, not even slightly. Instead, she picked up a paint swatch and examined it under the light. "People make assumptions," she said in a casual tone. "If that bothers you, you need thicker skin for business. You can't be sensitive about titles. But you signed the email as owner and executive director." This time she paused, but only for a split second, before turning to me with a practiced smile. "It reads more professionally," she said. "Suppliers take you seriously when they know someone with experience is in charge." In charge. Something bitter rose in the back of my throat. "I thought we were partners," I said quietly. "We are." She smiled again, too wide, too bright, as though it were plastered on. "But sweetheart, you're new to this. Someone has to lead. If you want this business to succeed, I need you to follow my guidance." She moved on from the conversation as if it were settled, as if the matter were too trivial to revisit. But I stood there frozen, watching her straighten candles on the display table, feeling the distance between us widen like a subtle but dangerous crack in the ground. That night, as I lay in bed beside Ethan, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above us, I tried to tell him about it. "She told suppliers she's the owner," I whispered, my voice shaken slightly. She called me her assistant." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, that familiar, frustrating gesture. "I'm sure she didn't mean it like that." "She signed the email as the owner, Ethan." He sighed. "She's helping you. She's invested her own money. It makes sense that she'd want to present a united front." "That's not a united front," I said. She erased me. Silence stretched between us. Finally, he said quietly, "You know how she is. Sometimes it's easier to let her lead. It keeps the peace." That sentence, "it keeps the peace," settled into my bones in a cold, heavy way. Was that what I had to do too? Let her lead. Let her take over. Let her reshape my dream because it kept the peace. My eyes stung, but I blinked hard against the tears. No, I couldn't think like that. Not yet. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was just the learning curve of business. Maybe once the boutique opened, things would feel different. Smoother, clearer, more equal. But deep down, beneath all the logic, I tried to wrap around myself. A quiet voice whispered, "This isn't the first crack. This is the warning." A warning I didn't listen to because I wanted so badly to believe in the dream. And sometimes, when you want something that deeply, you ignore the shadows gathering at the edges. If the email was the first crack, the next signs were hairline fractures running quietly beneath everything I touched. A missing receipt here, a changed decision there, a meeting moved without telling me, a supplier called back, confused why the assistant was handling pickups. All small things, small enough to dismiss, if I hadn't felt them gathering like storm clouds. But the moment the real discovery hit aim, Ikakai saw aina yananai okram ir okai. It was a Thursday afternoon when Diane insisted we go over a few forms at her house. Ethan was at work, and the boutique was days away from its soft opening. I was tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that made my eyes feel heavy, my steps slow. I should have been excited, but instead I felt a quiet pressure behind my ribs, like the air was too tight inside me. Diane's house smelled like lemon polish and strong perfume, just like always. She motioned for me to sit at the dining table, where a neat stack of documents waited. She poured herself a glass of white wine, but didn't pour one for me. That should have been another sign. "All right," she said, sitting across from me, flipping open the folder. One last round of paperwork before the launch. Nothing major, just signatures. She spoke lightly, but her tone was brisk, almost rehearsed. I pulled the first page toward me and began reading. The header read, Randall & Cohen, Lifestyle Boutique Management Agreement. My eyes narrowed. "Randall & Co.?" I asked softly. She waved her hand. "Branding, sweetheart. Classy, modern. It flows. But that's your last name." "It's a strong name," she said, sipping her wine, "and consumers trust strength." I set the paper down slowly. "Diane, why is my name not on the header?" She didn't look at me. She reached for another sheet, sliding it toward me. "You're overthinking again. Just sign so we can move forward." I didn't touch the page. I didn't blink. Something cold unfurled inside me. A strange, steadying chill. "I need to read these first," I said. Her jaw tightened, just a flicker, but enough. "Fine," she said, leaning back, "but do hurry." So I started from the top, and with each line, my stomach tightened more. The management agreement gave Diane full decision-making authority over all financial matters, power to approve or deny expenses, rights to hire or fire staff, ownership of brand assets, ownership of supplier relationships, and buried in the second page, the most devastating line, all business operations fall under the authority and ownership of Diane Randall. My blood went cold. I scanned for my name. Nothing. Not once. "Diane," I whispered, "my name isn't on any of this." She smiled, not warmly, not kindly, but with the thin, strained patience of someone waiting for a child to catch up. "I invested the money," she said. "I took the risk. These forms reflect that. But you told me it was a partnership." "And it is," she insisted, "a partnership where I provide the capital and experience, and you handle the creative side. That doesn't mean we're equals on paper." She said it as if this were a natural truth, as if I were naive for expecting fairness. My throat tightened. I flipped to another document, a contract with the building landlord, signed by Diane, not me, a supplier agreement, signed by Diane, a branding registration form, filed under her name. Every legal tie, every thread that anchored the business, led back to her and her alone. "Why didn't you show me these before now?" I asked, my voice shaking despite my effort to steady it. "Because you get emotional," she said calmly. "You let feelings get in the way of practical decisions." "No," I said, louder than I meant to. "I get informed, and I should have been informed. This is my business, my dream." She took another sip of wine, her lipstick leaving a perfect print on the glass. "That's where you're wrong," she said softly. "This isn't just yours anymore. I put in the money. The structure needs to reflect that. But you told me 50-50. She shrugged a little, like I was being dramatic. 50-50 in spirit, she said. But someone has to be responsible legally. And I have decades of experience. You don't. I stared at her, this woman who had looked me in the eyes weeks earlier and promised partnership, mentorship, support. What happens if I don't sign these? I asked. Her smile faded. Then the launch is delayed, she said slowly. Suppliers get spooked. The landlord might rent the space to someone else. You could lose everything we built. We built, I echoed. We, she repeated, but now the word sounded sharp. I placed my hands on the table, steadying myself. My pulse thudded in my ears. Is that a threat? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. I closed the folder gently. My fingers trembled. I need time, I said. Time? She repeated with a dry laugh. Sweetheart, business doesn't wait for your feelings. I'm not signing anything today. Her jaw clenched again, visibly this time. I thought you would be smarter than this, she said. You're making a mistake. No. A voice inside me whispered. A voice that had been quiet too long. The mistake was trusting you. But I didn't say it out loud. I gathered my things and stood. My legs felt shaky, but my resolve clearer than it had in weeks. Diane didn't walk me to the door. She didn't try to stop me. She just watched me leave, her eyes sharp, calculating, like she was already adjusting her strategy. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face, sharp and sobering. I inhaled deeply, gripping my bag like a lifeline. Everything I had worked for, every hour, every dream, was in her hands. And I didn't know it yet, but this wasn't the worst of it. The worst was still waiting, hidden, coiled, ready. Because betrayal rarely happens all at once. Sometimes it takes its time. Sometimes it waits for the perfect moment for breaking you here completely. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the occasional car passing outside, and Ethan's breath rising and falling beside me. I wanted to wake him, to shake him, to make him understand the weight pressing against my ribs. But I already knew what he'd say, that I was overreacting, that his mother meant well, that if I just trusted her, everything would work out. And in that moment, that hurt almost as much as what Diane had done. By morning, my decision was clear. I needed legal clarity. I wasn't going to sign anything until I knew exactly what those documents meant. I took the stack of papers, the ones Diane had pushed across the table, and drove to a small law office near downtown where an attorney named Ms. Cole had helped me once with a rental dispute. She was in her early 50s, with streaks of gray through her hair and a calm, thoughtful face that made people feel safe. She flipped through the pages slowly, pausing at certain sections, her eyebrows tightening. After 20 minutes, she set the stack down and looked at me. "Did you draft any of this?" she asked. "No." "And were these agreements discussed with you beforehand?" "No," I whispered. She leaned back in her chair, exhaling. "Then you need to be very, very careful." My throat tightened. "What exactly does this paperwork say?" She tapped the top page with her finger. "These documents remove you from any legal ownership of the business, completely. If you sign them, the business belongs to your mother-in-law, not you. You'd have no rights to revenue, branding, contracts, or even creative decisions." It felt like the room tilted. "All of this," she continued gently, "positions her as the sole owner. You, legally, would be an employee, one she can terminate at any time." My hands trembled. She said it was just formality, I whispered. She said it was still a partnership. A true partner would insist your name be on all documents, Ms. Cole said. And a true investor would never hide their ownership terms. This is intentionally deceptive. My breath caught in my chest. Intentionally deceptive. The words hit harder than I expected. Ms. Cole, I said quietly, is this normal? No, she said firmly. This is exploitation disguised as mentorship. My eyes stung. I blinked rapidly, willing the tears not to fall. Not yet. And there's more, she added. More? She pulled out the lease agreement, the one Diane had signed. This building lease is solely in her name, she said, meaning if anything goes wrong, financially or legally, you have no protection. She does. I felt sick. Is there any way to fix it? I asked, barely breathing. Ms. Cole hesitated. You'd need to renegotiate everything, redraft the ownership structure, ensure your contributions, creative, labor, intellectual property, are protected. But from the tone of these documents, I don't believe she ever intended to share ownership. My heartbeat fluttered painfully. I trusted her, I said. The words escaped like a confession. Miss Cole's expression softened. People don't manipulate strangers the way they manipulate family. Family gives them access to your trust, your hope, your dreams. That's why the damage cuts deeper. I swallowed hard. What should I do? I asked. Do not sign anything else. Keep every document and be prepared. Your mother-in-law will not take this well. I left the office gripping the folder like a shield, my mind racing. When I got home, Diane's car was already parked outside, sleek, shining, expensive. My stomach sank. She was waiting. Inside, she sat on my couch with her legs crossed and her purse neatly tucked beside her. Ethan sat in a nearby chair, rubbing the back of his neck. A sign he was caught in the middle of something he wished he didn't have to witness. Sweetheart, Diane said, her tone tight with impatience. I've been waiting. Why didn't you call? We need to finalize those documents. I shut the door behind me. I had them reviewed by an attorney, I said quietly. Her expression froze, perfectly still, like a mask. Oh, she said after a moment, her voice dangerously calm. And why would you do that? Because I needed to understand what I was signing. She laughed once, sharp, humorless. My goodness, you really are insecure, aren't you? Insecure? My voice cracked. Diane, the contracts remove me from the business entirely. My name isn't on anything. Nothing. You're being dramatic, she snapped. I'm being informed, I said firmly. Her eyes flashed, a sudden streak of anger I'd never seen so nakedly before. You wouldn't have a business without me, she said. You'd still be sitting in that little clinic answering phones. I felt the words hit like a slap. Ethan stood weakly. Mom, no, she said sharply, cutting him off. She needs to hear this. I have been generous, too generous. I offered you an opportunity you could never have afforded yourself. And in return, I said softly, you took everything. Diane stood now too, stepping closer, her perfume suddenly overwhelming. I took responsibility, she hissed. Because you have no idea what you're doing. I steadied myself, grounding my feet to the floor. I'm not signing anything, I said, and I'm not moving forward until my ownership is recognized. Her eyes narrowed, chilling. If you walk away from this deal, you lose everything, she said. Do you understand me? Everything. I met her gaze. Then I'll lose it, I whispered. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she picked up her purse, slung it over her shoulder, and said, "You'll regret this." She left without another word. The door shut hard behind her. Ethan stared at me, conflicted and pale. I wish you hadn't gone to a lawyer," he murmured. I turned toward him slowly. "You wish I hadn't protected myself?" He looked down at his feet, and in that moment, I realized something painful. I was alone in this, truly alone. But the full betrayal, the one that would knock the air from my lungs, it came 3 days later, when I walked into the boutique, my boutique, and found the locks changed. The morning I found the locks changed, the sky was unnervingly bright, the kind of gentle blue that should have felt peaceful, but instead made my stomach twist. I remember parking in front of the boutique, balancing my coffee cup in one hand and my keys in the other, humming softly under my breath in an effort to keep my anxiety from spilling over. But the moment the key wouldn't turn, the moment the metal scraped instead of clicking into place, something inside me sank. "Come on," I whispered, trying again, but the key refused to fit. I stepped back, staring at the door. A small white paper was taped to the glass. "Premises secured. Contact management for access. Management. Diane." My throat tightened. The morning breeze brushed my cheeks, carrying the faint scent of fresh-cut grass from across the street. A delivery truck rumbled by. Life moved on, while mine stood still. Someone inside noticed me. The curtain in the back office flicked. Then I saw her. Diane stepped out of the office, cool and composed, her lips a perfect shade of red as always. She walked toward the door with the calmness of someone who'd already won a battle she knew the other person didn't stand a chance in. She didn't open the door. She only unlocked it enough to crack it open an inch. "Sweetheart," she said, her tone almost pitying, "you shouldn't be here." I stared at her. "You changed the locks?" "I resecured the property," she corrected. "The landlord was informed." "You're not the landlord's tenant," I snapped. Her smile widened, thin and triumphant. "I am," she said. "You saw the paperwork, remember? You left before reading the final page." My pulse thudded painfully. I remembered. There was a page I hadn't read, the one tucked beneath another document. I'd assumed it was a duplicate. "What did you do?" I whispered. "I protected my investment," she said, shrugging as if this were all normal. "You walked away. You refused to sign the operating agreement. You refused to collaborate. That's abandonment of partnership." "Abandonment?" My voice broke. "I went to a lawyer because you lied." Her expression hardened just a fraction. "I made business decisions. If your feelings were hurt, that's on you." I felt heat rise in my face, anger, disbelief, heartbreak, mixing in a dizzying rush. "Diane," I said, breath shaking, "this was my dream." She nodded slowly. "Exactly why you needed me." Something inside me snapped, not loudly, not dramatically. It was a small, quiet break, like a hairline crack becoming a fracture. "You can't lock me out of my own business." "It isn't yours," she said calmly. Then she closed the door, right in my face. I heard the lock click 1, 2 times. The sound sharp and final. I stood there frozen, unable to breathe, unable to accept what was happening. I pressed my forehead lightly against the cool glass door. Inside, beyond that barrier, I saw the shelves I'd chosen, the paint color I had agonized over, the display table I had sanded by hand late into the night, the candles I sourced from small artisans I'd emailed personally, My vision blurred. She had taken it all. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, legally, physically. My dream was on the other side of that glass. And I was standing out on the sidewalk like a stranger. I didn't know how long I stood there. Minutes, maybe an hour. People passed by, glancing my way, but I couldn't move. Everything inside me felt hollow. My phone buzzed in my pocket. "Ethan," I answered weakly. "Hello?" "Mom said you showed up at the store," he said. She sounded upset. I closed my eyes. "Ethan," she changed the locks. There was a long, stunned silence. "What?" he whispered. "She locked me out. She's trying to take the entire business." I expected him to yell, to defend me, to finally see what I had been trying to tell him. But instead, he said softly, "Maybe you two can work it out." I held the phone tighter. "She stole from me." "Legally, it's complicated," he murmured. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it, disbelief washing over me. "Complicated?" My husband called the theft of my dream complicated. "Ethan," I said quietly, "whose side are you on?" He rubbed his neck. I could picture it without seeing him. That useless, frustrating gesture. "I'm not choosing sides. She's my mother. You're my wife. I'm stuck in the middle." "No," I said. "You're pretending the middle exists." He exhaled shakily. "Please don't start. I'm done starting. I'm done begging you to see what she's doing." "Can we talk when you calm down?" "Calm down." My heart sank. "I have to go," I whispered. I hung up before he could reply. I drove straight back to Miss Cole's office. When she saw my face, pale, trembling, eyes red, she didn't ask questions. She ushered me inside, closed the door gently behind us, and said, "What did she do?" "She locked me out," I whispered. "She changed the keys. She told me the business isn't mine anymore." Ms. Cole's jaw tightened. "Then it's time we take this further." I collapsed into the chair. "I can't fight her," I said, my voice breaking. "She has money, connections. She has my husband defending her. She has the building. She has the paperwork. She has everything." "You have truth," Miss Cole said. "You have every email, every message, every misrepresentation, and you have something she doesn't." "What?" Miss Cole leaned forward. "Her arrogance," she said. "People like her always believe they are too smart to get caught. They never cover their tracks completely." I swallowed hard. "What do I do?" "We build a case," she said. "A real one, based on fraud, misrepresentation, exploitation, and unjust enrichment." The words felt foreign to me, heavy and sharp. Legal words, serious words, words Diane had never expected I'd use against her. Miss Cole continued, "But first, we file an injunction to stop her from opening the store without you. Can we do that?" She nodded. "If she uses your intellectual property, your unpaid labor, or the brand you developed, she's violating your rights. That's enough to halt everything until a judge hears both sides." A tiny spark lit inside me. Not hope exactly, but something neighboring it. Something small yet steady. "But you need to prepare yourself," Miss Cole warned. "This will get ugly." I wiped my eyes, taking a shaky breath. "It already is." "Then we move forward," she said. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I nodded without hesitation. "Let's do it." I didn't know then how many battles still lay ahead, how many nights I would cry or question myself or feel broken beyond repair. But that moment, sitting across from Miss Cole, was the first time I chose myself. Not the dream, not the business, not the fantasy of a peaceful family. Me. And that choice, it would change everything. The injunction went through faster than I expected. Within 48 hours, Ms. Cole had filed a temporary restraining order preventing Diane from opening the store, altering inventory, destroying documents, or representing the business publicly. It felt surreal, seeing her name listed on official paperwork as the defendant. A part of me felt guilty. A larger part of me felt justice stirring for the first time. The day the sheriff's deputy delivered the notice to the boutique, I stayed in my car across the street, hands trembling around the steering wheel. I watched the officer step into the shop, watched Diane approach him with that poised smile of hers, the one she used in church, at charity galas, at every event where she needed to look like the polished, perfect matriarch she had crafted herself to be. Her smile faded the moment he handed her the paperwork. Even from across the street, I saw her face change. Shock first, then disbelief, then a sharp flash of something darker. She glanced out the window and saw me sitting there. Our eyes met. This wasn't like our fights behind closed doors. This wasn't a clash whispered in kitchens or argued in living rooms. This was public. This was documented. This was real. She stepped outside, her heels tapping hard against the pavement, her jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought she might walk across the street and confront me, scream at me, demand explanations, unleash the fury I knew boiled beneath her perfume and pearls. But instead, she froze on the sidewalk, shoulders rising and falling, chest tight. Then she turned away and went back inside. News spreads fast in small business circles, faster in families, fastest in communities where people gossip over fences and grocery store aisles. The first message I received was from a vendor. "Hey, is everything okay? Your MIL sent a confusing email. Something about restructuring? Just want to make sure you're still involved." The second came from a friend who worked at the salon next door to the boutique. People are talking. Diane came outside earlier and told someone you stole her idea. Just checking on you. Stole her idea. The boutique concept I had dreamed of since college. The branding board I designed by hand. The suppliers I researched for months. The displays I built myself. I felt a familiar ache in my chest. But Ms. Cole had prepared me for this. She will spin a story, she'd warned. People like her rarely admit wrongdoing. Let the legal process speak for you. I tried to breathe through it. Still. That afternoon, when I stopped at a cafe to pick up tea, a woman I vaguely recognized from Diane's church group approached me. Her expression was filled with concern, or what I once believed was concern. "I heard about the disagreement between you two," she said softly. "Family conflict is always so unfortunate. Unfortunate." The word tasted bitter. I nodded politely. "Thank you for your concern." She leaned in. "I hope you know Diane only wants what's best for you." I held my breath for a moment to steady myself. "I appreciate your thoughts," I said calmly. "But the situation is more complicated than it appears." Her eyes flickered, not with understanding, but with discomfort, and she awkwardly excused herself. I walked out of the cafe, feeling like the world had tilted slightly off balance. That was when a new message buzzed on my phone. It was from a woman I'd never met in person, a former employee of Diane's from one of her old businesses. "If you're dealing with Diane Randall, you're not alone. She did something similar to two of us. took credit for our work, pushed us out. Just wanted you to know you're not crazy. My breath caught. Then another message came, then another. Former assistants, former partners, former collaborators. Some had worked with her 20 years ago, some only 1 year. Different people, same pattern. It dawned on me, I wasn't her first, but I would be her last. When the preliminary hearing arrived, Diane walked into the courthouse wearing a pale blue suit and a pearl necklace. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She held herself like a wrong queen stepping into a room of traitors. Ethan was beside her. He avoided looking at me, his hand hovering near the back of his neck, his shield, his nervous tell. My heart stung, but I kept my chin lifted. Ms. Cole guided me to my seat, her calm presence grounding me. The judge arrived, flipping through the documents before him. Ms. Randall, he said, addressing Diane, do you understand why you've been ordered to halt operations of the boutique? Diane stood confidently. Your Honor, there has been a misunderstanding. The business is mine. I invested the capital. I secured the lease. I developed the brand. Ms. Cole cleared her throat softly. Your Honor, we have evidence that the creative concept, the branding, the labor, and the day-to-day development were done solely by my client. We also have emails where Ms. Randall refers to her as an assistant, despite promising partnership, and financial documents showing my client was intentionally excluded from ownership. The judge held up one of the signed agreements. This contract, he said, is deeply unbalanced. And, given the informal nature of their initial arrangement, the court will need more information to determine the true intent of the partnership. Diane's jaw twitched, the tiniest tell of panic. My pulse steadied. For the first time, she felt cornered. The judge continued. For now, the restraining order remains in place. Ms. Randall is prohibited from further altering the business until ownership is clarified. A small, warm wave washed through me. Not victory, but validation. Diane opened her mouth as if to argue, but the judge lifted a hand. You are welcome to present your evidence at the next hearing, but until then, both parties must comply with this order. Understood? Diane swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. Her voice wasn't as steady as before. After the hearing, as I walked toward the parking lot, I heard someone call my name. I turned. It wasn't Diane. It wasn't Ethan. It was the owner of the building, the landlord who had signed papers with Diane. He approached carefully, hands in his pockets. Listen, he said, clearing his throat. I didn't know everything that was going on. She told me you two were co-owners and you had approved everything. I nodded slowly. I understand. If I had known, he hesitated. I'm just sorry you're going through this. His voice was gentle, genuine. I blinked back sudden tears. For weeks I'd felt invisible, unheard, brushed off. This one small moment felt like sunlight in the darkness. And then he said something I never expected. For what it's worth, the community's on your side. People are talking, not in a bad way. They've seen your work, your dedication. They know what you built. My chest tightened, but in a warm way this time. People were seeing. People were understanding. People were paying attention. And for someone like Diane, who thrived on reputation, that was a consequence deeper than anything I could have orchestrated. A public shift, a change in the air, a crack in her flawless facade. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. 2 days after the hearing, I heard a knock at my apartment door. A soft one, hesitant, not the kind someone uses when they're angry or triumphant. I already knew who it was. I opened the door and found Ethan standing there, shoulders slumped, hands buried deep in his jacket pockets. He looked exhausted, not physically, but emotionally wrung out, like someone caught between two worlds and crushed by both. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. For a moment, I hesitated. There was a time when hearing his voice would fill me with warmth. Now it triggered a tightness in my stomach, dread mixed with hope, both equally painful. Still, I stepped aside. He entered like he wasn't sure he belonged there anymore. I gestured for him to sit, but he remained standing, pacing, once before stopping near the dining table. The silence stretched. Then finally, he spoke. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear I didn't know how bad it had gotten." A bitter laugh escaped me. "I didn't mean for it to." "Ethan, you watched it happen." He flinched. "I thought," he exhaled shakily. "She told me you were overwhelmed, that she was helping, that you wanted her to take over the business side because it was stressing you out. She said you needed guidance." Guidance. The word made my skin crawl. "I told you, Ethan," I said, voice trembling despite my effort to stay steady. "I told you she was crossing lines. I told you she was taking things from me. You just didn't want to hear it." His eyes filled with guilt. "I thought you were overreacting. My mom, she's always been intense, but she's also always been the one to fix things. She handles stuff. She makes plans. She makes things happen. She takes things," I corrected softly, "especially from women younger than her, especially from women who don't push back." I didn't want to believe it either, but it's true. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "I know that now." Ethan rubbed his forehead, pacing again. When he finally stopped, he looked at me with a kind of vulnerability I hadn't seen from him in years. "The hearing," he said slowly, "seeing the judge shut her down, seeing what she signed, the emails, the way she talked about you, even in court." He shook his head. "I didn't recognize her." His voice cracked. "And then she told me afterward that you were trying to destroy her, that you were ungrateful, that you needed to be taught a lesson." The bile rose in my throat. "What did you say to her?" "I told her she went too far," Ethan whispered. "She lost it. She said I was choosing you over her, that I was being manipulated." He looked up at me then. For the first time in my life, I didn't believe her. Something in my chest tightened. Not joy, not relief, grief, because I knew what that meant for him. "You stood up to her," I said quietly. "Yeah." "How did she react?" He gave a small humorless laugh. "She told me I'm weak, that you're turning me against her, that if I had any sense, I'd demand you drop the case." My heart broke a little, because I knew how hard that must have been for him to hear, and how deeply it must have cut. "I didn't come here to defend her," Ethan said quickly. "I'm not going to ask you to stop the legal process. You did what you had to do." He took a breath, voice unsteady. "I came here because I'm falling apart. That stopped me. I feel like I'm losing my mother," he said quietly, "and I feel like I've already lost you." His voice broke completely on the last word. "Ethan." "No, let me say this," he interrupted gently. "I chose wrong, over and over again. I didn't listen. I didn't protect you. I didn't believe you. That's on me. That's my failure, not hers, not yours." His chin trembled. And I'm sorry, he whispered. I am so sorry. Tears welled in my eyes because I had wanted to hear those words for months, maybe years, but now that they were here, they didn't heal the way I imagined. They hurt because it was too late. I love you, Ethan said softly. I don't want to lose this, lose us. I want to fix it. I know you do, I whispered, but we can't go back from this. Things don't unhappen. He took a shaky breath. So what? What are we? What happens now? I looked at him, really looked. This was the man I married. This was the boy who had been raised to orbit his mother like a planet trapped in her gravity. He wasn't a villain, but he had caused damage, real, deep damage. I need space, I said. I need safety. I need to rebuild what she took from me. And right now, I can't do that while being your wife. He closed his eyes, like he had been expecting that answer and desperately hoping he was wrong. So we're separating. A tear rolled down my cheek. Yes, he nodded slowly. Pain etched into every line of his face. I'll respect whatever you need, he whispered. And if you ever want me to show up in court, or to give a statement, or to confirm that you created everything, I will. I won't protect her lies anymore. That surprised me. You'd really testify? Yes. No hesitation. For once. I believed him. He walked toward the door but stopped, hand resting on the knob. Then he turned back. Just tell me one thing, he said softly. Do you hate me? I shook my head, tears blurring my sight. No, I don't hate you. A pause. I just can't trust you right now. The truth hurt both of us. He nodded once, swallowed, and left. The door clicked shut, and with it, the last piece of my old life. If you've ever had your life fall apart, you'll understand this. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive like a thunderclap. Sometimes it comes quietly in an email notification at 2:14 p.m. on an ordinary Wednesday. I was sitting at my small apartment desk, the one I bought secondhand with a drawer that sticks, staring at blank notes for my new business idea. Nothing felt inspired. Nothing felt like mine. I was still floating between grief and survival. That's when I heard the ping, a message from an address I didn't recognize. At first, I almost deleted it. I'd been getting spam since the hearing made it into a small local business bulletin, but the subject line made me freeze. You don't know me, but I used to work with your mother-in-law. My pulse kicked up. I opened it. Hello, my name is Teresa. I was your mother-in-law's bookkeeper for 5 months. I'm reaching out because I think you deserve to know the truth about your business. I have documents that show she intended to take full ownership long before she invested with you guys. I sat up straighter. My hands went cold. My crumb. Attached are copies of internal emails she forwarded to me as instructions. I didn't understand what was happening until later, and by then I had no way of contacting you. I'm sorry. I hope this helps. There were 5 attachments. Each one could change everything. I opened the first. It was an email from Sandra, my mother-in-law, to a real estate agent, dated months before she ever offered to mentor me. I'll need a commercial lease in my name only. The brand will initially be under my daughter-in-law's ownership, but not for long. Not for long. 3 words that made my stomach twist. I clicked the next document, an email to a graphic designer she'd worked with on one of her past projects. Can you prepare the following changes? I want the brand to transition gradually from Mila's Home Crafts to Sandra & Co. Keep the colors, but elevate the feel. The timestamp, 2 weeks after she invested. I felt sick. Then the third attachment, a spreadsheet, instructions to Teresa, outlining a timeline. Phase 1, invest modest capital. Phase 2, gain administrative control. Phase 3, assume full brand ownership. Phase 4, dissolve original LLC. Dissolve. She planned to erase me from my own idea. Documents 4 and 5 were even worse. 1 was a message to a potential silent partner. My daughter-in-law is creative but naive. I'll get full control by early summer. The last was addressed to Ethan, saved in drafts, never sent. She's too emotional to run a business. Once it's in my hands, things will stabilize. A sharp ache hit my chest. Because this was the first hard proof, concrete, undeniable, that she hadn't been misguided or controlling or just trying to help. She had been plotting from the very beginning. Send them over, my lawyer said, voice vibrating with a kind of righteous energy I hadn't heard from her before. All of them. These aren't just unethical. They demonstrate premeditated bad faith. This could change the entire trajectory of your case. I forwarded the files, each one a fresh blow to my heart, but a strange feeling rose beneath the grief. Relief. Because I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't ungrateful. I had been right. After months of feeling small, uncertain, ashamed, the fog was beginning to lift. That evening, just after sunset, someone knocked. I peeked through the peephole. Ethan. My breath caught. He wasn't alone. Behind him stood a woman. Thin, older, wearing glasses and holding a folder close to her chest like a shield. He noticed me looking and lifted a hand. Please, he said softly through the door, we're not here to fight. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Ethan exhaled with visible relief. This is Teresa. My eyes widened. The Teresa? She nodded shyly. I'm sorry to come unannounced. I just thought, given the seriousness, maybe this would be better explained in person. She stepped inside gently, like she didn't want to disturb anything. I quit working for her months ago, Teresa said, twisting her hands. She was difficult, controlling, but I didn't know what she was doing with your business until I overheard a conversation in her office. My breath hitched. What conversation? She was talking to someone on speakerphone, a contractor maybe, I'm not sure, about how she planned to replace you as the face of the brand. Replace me. I steadied myself against the edge of the counter. That's when I started saving documents, Teresa continued. Just in case. I didn't know if I'd ever use them, but when I saw the article about the hearing, she swallowed. I knew. Her eyes were sincere, heavy with regret. I'm sorry it took so long. I blinked back tears. You didn't have to come, but thank you. She nodded and handed me the folder, physical copies of everything she had emailed. Ethan stepped forward then, his voice thick. I didn't bring her here to get involved in our marriage, he said. I thought you deserved someone who could confirm you weren't imagining any of it. I looked at him. For a brief moment, the old warmth flickered. Not love. That felt too far away now, but recognition. He wasn't standing with his mother anymore. He was standing on the side of the truth. As Teresa prepared to leave, she paused. There's one more document, she said quietly. I didn't send it because, well, I wasn't sure how you'd take it. My chest tightened. She handed over a single printed email. It was short, just 2 sentences. From Sandra to her attorney. Once I have full ownership, I want to trademark the business under my name alone. My daughter-in-law won't fight me. She's too dependent on my support. Dependent. A deep, old wound I didn't know I still carried, pulsed painfully inside me. She never saw me as a partner, or even as a family member, only as someone she could control. By the time they left, the sky had gone dark and my apartment was silent. But I didn't feel alone. For the first time in months, I felt powerful because now I had proof, not whisper, not suspicion, not emotion, proof. And proof was something her manipulation couldn't twist. People like my mother-in-law don't just build businesses, they build reputations. Sandra had spent years curating hers, the generous mentor, the decisive leader, the woman who lifted other women up. She was known at community events, local business seminars, charity brunches, smiling, polished, impossibly composed, but reputations are fragile things. All they need is one truth strong enough to shake the foundation, and mine was about to do exactly that. My attorney called me the next morning. "We're moving forward," she said, her tone firm but almost excited. "These documents, especially the timeline in the lease email, create a clear narrative of intent. This is no longer a simple contract dispute. It's a pattern." "What does that mean for the case?" I asked. "It means the court will almost certainly schedule a new evidentiary hearing, and it won't be quiet." I hesitated. "How public will it be?" "Very, Mila. She's a known figure. People follow these filings. Journalists, too." A strange mix of dread and justice churned in my stomach. I didn't want a spectacle. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. And sometimes truth is loud, even when you whisper it. The next day, a local business reporter emailed me asking for a comment about the allegations. I hadn't said a word to anyone, but the filings were public record now, and reporters read them like morning prayer. I didn't respond. I wasn't interested in performing my pain for an audience. But Sandra lived for an audience, which is why the following morning a post appeared on her professional Facebook page, long, dramatic, full of self-pitying platitudes. "It breaks my heart to face such unfair accusations from a family member I only ever tried to help. I invested my time, money, and love into her business because I believed in her. I am devastated by this betrayal." No details, no facts, just emotional framing, the oldest manipulation tactic she owned. The comments flooded in. "Oh, Sandra, stay strong. Some people don't appreciate kindness. You've always been such a generous woman." It stung, not because I wanted validation, but because lies spread faster than truth. Ethan called me that night, voice tight. "She's spiraling," he said. "She spent all day on the phone. She keeps saying you're destroying her reputation." "I didn't post anything," I said quietly. "I know, but in her head, perception is reality." 2 days later, everything changed. A well-known local business columnist published a piece titled, "Local Entrepreneur Accused of Attempted Corporate Takeover. Evidence Suggests Premeditation." The article didn't mention me by name, only that I was a family business partner. But it named Sandra in bold letters. The journalist had obtained the attachments from the court file. He quoted the spreadsheet, the email about dissolving my LLC, the message calling me naive and emotional. He ended with a line I'll never forget. "If these documents are verified as authentic, they paint a devastating picture of calculated exploitation." By noon, the article was everywhere in town. People weren't commenting supportive hearts anymore. They were asking questions. What is this about? Is this real? I thought Sandra supported women in business? Some comments turned sharper. This isn't mentorship. This is theft. I always felt something off about her perfect act. She used her position, disgusting if true. Her polished image cracked, then splintered. That night, Ethan came to see me again, this time not to talk about us, but about her. I've never seen her like this, he said, sitting on the edge of my couch, rubbing his hands anxiously. She's furious and scared, really scared. She should be, I said softly, not with triumph, just truth. She keeps saying she'll sue everyone, but her lawyer won't even return her calls right now. He probably saw the documents. I breathed out slowly. And she told my sister that I abandoned her. He added with a bitter laugh, that I chose an outsider over my own blood. That didn't surprise me. Losing control is her greatest fear, I said. He nodded, eyes heavy. Yeah, and you're the first person who ever took that control back. It wasn't meant as a compliment, but it settled in me like one. 2 days later, the fallout became visible. I was at the grocery store picking up eggs when I heard raised voices near the bakery aisle. I'm just saying, if the documents are real, then she crossed a line. She said the girl was mentally unstable, that she was helping her. That's not what the emails show. I didn't mean to, but I froze behind my cart. They weren't talking about me, not directly, but they were talking about her, about the truth. Then one of the women looked up and recognized me. Her expression shifted, not pity, but something warmer, human. She walked over cautiously. Are you Mila? I nodded, my throat tightening. She touched my arm gently. I'm sorry you went through that. Nobody deserves that kind of betrayal, especially from family. The sincerity in her eyes nearly broke me. Others glanced my way with sympathetic looks. Not judgment, not gossip, understanding. For the first time, I felt seen, not as a victim, but as someone who had survived something hard and still stood upright. Later that week, Sandra tried one more public move. She posted a video, shaky, emotional, half-scripted, trying to spin the narrative. But the comments told a different story. This doesn't explain the documents. Why didn't you deny the emails? Why talk vaguely instead of addressing facts? Accountability isn't betrayal. People weren't blindly siding with her anymore. The truth had finally created enough weight to tip the scale. Sandra wasn't used to that. She wasn't built for scrutiny. Her entire identity relied on unquestioned authority. And now, the questions wouldn't stop. That night, my lawyer called again. We may be closing in on a settlement, she said. Her team is faltering. Your evidence is strong. The public pressure isn't helping her. For the first time since the nightmare began, I felt something like hope, not because I wanted to win, but because justice, slow, quiet, unglamorous justice, was finally catching up to her, and I was ready to face whatever came next. I used to think courtrooms were cold places, all echoing footsteps, stiff benches, and the scent of old paper. But that morning, when I walked through the heavy wooden doors for the final hearing, the room felt warm in a strange way, maybe because for the first time, I wasn't walking in as someone afraid of losing everything. I was walking in as someone who had already survived the worst. Ethan sat in the back row, not beside his mother, not beside me, somewhere in the middle, which was exactly where he was emotionally too. Sandra sat at her attorney's table, shoulders tight, lips pursed. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, as if the weight of the past weeks had finally settled on her spine. She didn't look at me, and I didn't expect her to. The judge entered, papers in hand. He looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from reading too many lies and too many truths and deciding which ones will shape someone's future. Let's begin. My attorney started strong. She presented the spreadsheet first, the timeline, color-coded with phases like assume control and brand takeover. Then the email about dissolving my LLC. Then the drafted message about how I was naive and easily guided. Every document was projected on a screen behind her. The courtroom was silent, except for the soft scrape of someone shifting in a seat. Sandra's attorney objected 3 times, claiming context, claiming misinterpretation. But each objection fell flat. The judge overruled them without hesitation. When the email to the real estate agent appeared, the one where Sandra clearly requested a future lease in her name only, the judge's expression sharpened. This is dated 3 months before the investment, he said evenly. How do you explain this, Mrs. Lane? Sandra's jaw tightened. My intention was to secure a backup plan. I was trying to protect our interests. The judge raised an eyebrow. How does one protect shared interests by planning to remove their partner? Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No can't say an answer, sorry, Karen can. Gansa came. It was the first time I'd ever seen Sandra lost for words. My attorney gently nudged my arm. It's time. My throat tightened as I stood. I wasn't a dramatic person by nature. I didn't want speeches or spotlight, but this was my moment to tell the truth, the real truth, the kind that came from lived experience, not paperwork. I stepped forward. My business was born at my kitchen table. I said softly, before anyone invested, before anyone advised me, it was mine, my creativity, my time, my passion. I took a breath. When Sandra offered to help, I believed her. I believed she saw potential in me. I believed she wanted me to succeed. I looked at the judge, then down at my own hands. Instead, she took what I built and made plans to erase me from it. Not because I was failing, not because I needed saving, but because she thought I wouldn't fight back. Sandra shifted in her seat, visibly irritated. I continued. This isn't just about money. It's about dignity, about being treated with respect, about not being dismissed because you're young, or because you're family, or because someone thinks they know better. My voice caught, but I didn't stop. I'm not trying to destroy her reputation, but I won't let her destroy my future. When I returned to my seat, Ethan's eyes were glassy. Sandra's were burning. When her attorney asked if she wanted to respond, Sandra stood abruptly. Her composure cracked. She was ungrateful from the beginning. She snapped, pointing at me. She didn't know anything about business. I tried to guide her, improve her idea. It needed structure. Her voice grew sharper. What was I supposed to do? Let her fail? Let her throw away an opportunity because she's too sensitive to handle real decisions. Her attorney tried to hush her, but she pushed his hand away. I took control because someone had to. Everything I did was for her own good. If she couldn't see that, it's not my fault. Dead silence. The judge leaned forward, clasping his hands. Mrs. Lane, he said calmly, You just confirmed in your own words that you assumed control without consent. The color drained from her face. Control without consent. 2 phrases no judge overlooks. He shuffled his papers. I've reviewed the documents, the testimony, and the pattern of behavior. My ruling is as follows. Sandra held her breath. So did I. The court finds that Mrs. Lane engaged in deceptive practices and acted in bad faith. The words landed like pebbles dropped into a still pond, quiet but powerful enough to ripple outward. Bad faith, a legal phrase that carries weight like a hammer. Ownership of the business and all intellectual property shall be returned to Miss Bennett. Mrs. Lane relinquishes all claims, present and future. Sandra gasped, a sharp, wounded sound. The judge continued. Furthermore, Mrs. Lane is ordered to cover a portion of Ms. Bennett's legal fees due to the intentional nature of her actions. I closed my eyes, not in triumph, in relief. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel struck. And just like that, my business was mine again. As people shuffled out, Sandra stood frozen, staring straight ahead, not at me, not at her attorney, at nothing. For someone who had always been so composed, so curated, so in control, the emptiness in her eyes was jarring. Ethan approached her gently. Mom, let's go home. She jerked away from him. You did this, she hissed. You sided with her. You betrayed me. I sided with the truth, he said quietly. Sandra grabbed her purse, chin trembling, and stormed out of the courtroom. People parted to let her pass, not with admiration this time, but with a kind of uneasy pity. Ethan turned to me. She won't speak to me after this, he said softly. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. He shook his head. Don't be. I made my choices. We stood there for a long moment. 2 people who once shared a life, now sharing only the weight of what had been lost. Then he stepped back. I'm proud of you, he whispered. And he walked away too. In the span of a single morning, a chapter that had held me hostage finally closed. I walked out of that courthouse with empty hands but a full heart. I didn't have a business yet. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have stability, but I had myself, and that was the beginning of everything I was about to build next. The weeks after the verdict were quiet, quieter than I expected. No celebration, no champagne, no parades, just stillness. It was a different kind of relief, one that settled deep into my bones. I had won, yes, but the victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in knowing that I could survive betrayal, humiliation, and the unraveling of everything I thought I understood about family. I had lost more than money. I had lost trust. I had lost the illusion that love and loyalty are guaranteed by blood. But I had gained something else, something stronger, self-respect. I sat at my kitchen table again, the same one where my first sketches, ideas, and spreadsheets had come to life. This time, I had nothing but a notebook, a pen, and my own 2 hands. I drew the new logo myself. I wrote the mission statement myself. I reached out to vendors who had supported me before, carefully this time, with contracts and clear boundaries. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fast, but it was mine. And I was learning that ownership is not just about paperwork. It's about heart. It's about protection. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone dictate it. I didn't try to rebuild alone. Ms. Cole checked in weekly. Teresa offered advice on accounting and inventory management. Even Ethan, at a distance, sent texts occasionally, not to influence, not to intervene, but to encourage. It was strange to be surrounded by people who wanted to see me thrive, not control me. I'd forgotten what that felt like, and I reveled in it. I also learned to set boundaries. Every new contact, every potential partner, every employee, I made sure that the rules, roles, and responsibilities were clear. No one would be allowed to manipulate me again. Not my family, not my friends, not anyone. Rebuilding my business was one thing. Rebuilding myself was another. For months, I woke up with a tight knot in my chest, reliving what Sandra had done. Her betrayal wasn't just financial. It had chipped at my sense of self. Therapy helped. Meditation helped. Writing in a journal helped more than I expected. I wrote about everything, the trust I had placed in her, the deception I had endured, the shame I had felt when the community whispered and stared. Writing it down made it tangible. It made it something I could hold, examine, and then release. I learned that healing is not linear. Some days I felt triumphant. Other days I still felt the sting, but each day the pain was slightly less sharp. 6 months after the court ruling, my new business was ready to launch. I named it carefully, something that represented resilience, creativity, and authenticity. The launch was small, a soft opening with local vendors, a few friends, and my closest supporters. The first customer walked in and said, "It feels genuine here. I can tell you built this with love." Tears prickled my eyes. It wasn't just the compliment. It was validation. The world finally saw the truth I had always known. I had learned to trust myself again, to trust my instincts, to protect what was mine. And I promised myself, silently but firmly, that I would never allow anyone to steal that feeling again. Sandra's betrayal had been a painful teacher. I learned that love and family are not guarantees against manipulation. That evidence, boundaries, and documentation aren't just legal tools. They're shields for your life and your dignity. That rebuilding from scratch is not a failure. It's a declaration of strength. That trust must be earned, not assumed, even from family. That forgiveness isn't about excusing wrongdoing. It's about freeing yourself. I forgave Sandra quietly, not in a gesture of reconciliation, but to release the hold her actions had on me. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need her apology. I needed my peace. Sitting in my new studio one evening, watching the sun slip below the rooftops, I realized something important. This journey, the betrayal, the court case, the loss, the rebuild, had reshaped me. I was more careful now, yes, more guarded, but I was also more alive, more attuned to the people who truly mattered, more appreciative of my own resilience. I smiled at a stack of invoices I'd prepared for the week. I inhaled the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee. I heard the soft hum of the city outside my window, and I knew, finally, that I was safe and strong and whole again. Would you have been able to stand so firmly after losing everything to someone you trusted? If my story resonates, please subscribe for more true first-person stories of resilience, family conflict, and the quiet power of reclaiming your life. Sitting here, looking back on everything that happened, the betrayal, the court battles, the months of rebuilding, I can't help but feel a quiet kind of gratitude. Gratitude not for what I lost, but for what I learned, for the strength I discovered when I thought I had none, for the clarity that came from walking through fire and realizing I could still stand. Family isn't always what we hope it will be. Sometimes those we trust the most can wound us deeply, and sometimes the people we love, even with the best intentions, fail us in ways that change everything. But here's the truth I've learned, and the truth I hope you take with you. You cannot control the actions of others, but you can always control how you respond. You cannot erase the past, but you can build a future that honors your courage. And you cannot rely on anyone else to validate your worth. You must see it for yourself. I rebuilt my business, yes. I reclaimed what was mine. But more importantly, I reclaimed my sense of self, my voice, my dignity, and that more than any financial victory is what keeps me grounded, even on hard days. So I leave you with this question. When someone betrays your trust, when someone takes more than they give, when the world feels unfair, will you let it define you? Or will you use it as the spark to create something stronger, something wiser, something entirely your own? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your story in the comments, and if my journey has inspired you even a little, subscribe for more stories that remind us, no matter what life throws our way, we can find our way back, stronger, wiser, and whole.